I heard the sound of pipes breaking my daughter's bones from the hospital. So I hacked their encrypted messages, gave the FBI their 20-minute drug lab, and put 34 of them in prison for life. My name is Leo Thorne, and for 20 years, I believed I understood the anatomy of human darkness. As an investigative journalist, I had navigated the treacherous waters of political corruption and corporate malfeasance, where threats came dressed in suits and delivered through lawyers. I thought evil was a cold, calculating beast that operated in boardrooms. I was arrogantly, catastrophically wrong. The most feral danger didn't care for nuance. It lurked in the decaying, moss-choked heart of the jungle beyond our home, and it didn't send cease and desist letters. It sent men with pipes to bludgeon my 16-year-old daughter into a bloody pulp on the side of a deserted road. My sanctuary wasn't just a place, it was a person, and it was a promise. Her name is Maya. She is the living embodiment of her mother, Isabella, a renowned ethnobotanist whose life was a love letter to the vibrant, teeming ecosystem that surrounded our home. Isabella hadn't just studied the jungle, she had conversed with it. She could decipher the warning calls of howler monkeys, identify medicinal plants by the vein patterns on their leaves, and explain the ancient symbiosis between the strangler fig and its host. When a rapid-onset sepsis stole Isabella from us 4 years ago, the jungle became our tether to her, a living, breathing memorial. Our home, a stunning glass and reclaimed teak structure I'd designed myself, stood on the very precipice of the vast Santa Rosa National Reserve. It wasn't a fortress against the wild. It was a bridge to it. The jungle was our backyard, our classroom, our catharsis. It was supposed to be our protector. Maya inherited her mother's fierce intellect and boundless curiosity, but she channeled it through a modern digital prism. Her YouTube channel, Maya's Wild Explorations, was her sanctuary within the sanctuary. What began as a school project, a digital diary of her hikes, blossomed into a community of 50,000 subscribers who tuned in to watch her explain the symbiotic relationship between leafcutter ants and their fungus gardens, or document the recovery of a rescued ocelot at a local sanctuary. She was all sharp intelligence, quick wit, and a resilient optimism that I, the jaded journalist, clung to like a life raft. She was my purpose, my pride, my entire world. Protecting her, and the peace we had carved out of our grief, was my sole, unwavering mission. The antagonists were a cancer metastasizing in the body of our sanctuary, a poison that had seeped into the very soil. They were known locally as the Vipers. Where most saw a dangerous gang, I, in my professional arrogance, had initially dismissed them as a local nuisance, a small-time drug operation of no real consequence. I was wrong. They were a sophisticated paramilitary-style organization that had turned the ruins of the old Clearwater paper mill, a relic deep within the jungle's embrace, into a massive, industrial-scale drug manufacturing facility. Their leader was a specter known only as Cobra. No one knew his real name, his face, or his past. He was a rumor given weight by the fear he inspired, a phantom whose presence was felt in the sudden silence that fell over local bars when his enforcers entered. In the way shopkeepers suddenly couldn't remember what they'd seen, the Vipers were the reason the old logging roads were avoided, the reason seasoned hunters carried sidearms, the reason the deep jungle was spoken of in hushed, fearful tones at town meetings. They were a dark fairy tale that we, in our comfortable glass house, had foolishly believed we were insulated from. The foundation of the coming storm was laid brick by brick through a series of memories that, in retrospect, painted a terrifyingly clear picture. The first was a town hall meeting 2 years prior. Sheriff Miller, a decent but overwhelmed man, had pleaded for state resources to combat the growing gang influence. A slick, impeccably dressed man named Inspector Marco Rossi from the Regional Task Force had taken the podium, assuring everyone the situation was under control, that his unit was making significant inroads. He'd specifically downplayed the Viper's capabilities. I'd written it off as bureaucratic posturing. The second memory was more personal. 8 months ago, Maya had come home from school furious. Her friend, a local kid named Carlos whose family ran a small farm, had been threatened by Viper enforcers demanding protection money. Carlos's father had gone to the police, and Inspector Rossi himself had taken the statement. Nothing ever came of it. A week later, a barn on the property mysteriously burned to the ground. The official report called it an electrical fire. Carlos's family moved away a month later. I remember the frustrated tears in Maya's eyes as she told me, "It's not right, Dad. Why isn't anyone stopping them? I, in my worldly wisdom, had told her that these things were complicated, that evidence was hard to come by. I had failed to see the pattern. The third and most damning memory was of Rossi himself. He'd started frequenting the local diner, always alone, always reading a newspaper. He'd made a point of introducing himself to me, the famous journalist. "Big fan of your work, Mr. Thorne," he'd said, his smile not quite reaching his cold, calculating eyes. "If you ever hear anything interesting, out here in the sticks, you know where to find me." There was an unspoken pressure in his words, a territorial claim. He wasn't just a cop, he was a gatekeeper. I had dismissed him as an ambitious climber. I didn't realize he was the lion, pretending to be a shepherd. My sanctuary was built on a foundation of trust. Trust in the natural order, trust in my ability to protect my daughter, and a naive, vestigial trust in the systems of law. The vipers, enabled and protected by the very man sworn to stop them, were systematically undermining that foundation. They were the rot in the roots of our jungle, and I was about to learn that when rot takes hold, the entire tree can come crashing down. The invitation to our nightmare was delivered wrapped in my daughter's innocent passion. It was a perfect sun-drenched Saturday, the air thick with the scent of blooming jasmine and wet earth after a morning rain. Maya was buzzing with a kinetic energy I hadn't seen in weeks. She had planned a special, ambitious episode for her channel, The Ghost in the Machine. Ecology reclaims the Clearwater Mill. It was a perfect blend of local history, urban exploration, and environmental science. She was going with her two best friends, Liam, a tech whiz who handled her sound and editing, and Chloe, a budding photographer with an artist's eye. They were good kids, smart and responsible. We had a firm, non-negotiable rule. They were to stay on the known periphery of the mill, not venture inside the unstable structures, be back before dusk, and call if anything seemed even slightly off. They were equipped with satellite communicators, a comprehensive first aid kit, and, most importantly, Maya's professional-grade vlogging camera. What they discovered in the mill's corpse was a waking nightmare that would eclipse any ghost story. The initial shots for her vlog were breathtakingly beautiful and eerily poignant. Sunlight spearing through collapsed roofs to illuminate swirling dust motes, vibrant green vines strangling rusted gears into submission. The haunting silence of abandoned industry. But as they moved deeper into the complex, drawn by the sheer scale of the decay, the silence was broken. It was Liam who heard it first, a low, consistent industrial hum that was utterly alien to the jungle's soundscape. Then the smell hit them, an acrid chemical stench that burned the nostrils and clawed at the back of the throat, overwhelming the jungle's natural perfume of decay and blossom. Driven by a dawning horror and a journalist's instinct she'd undoubtedly inherited, Maya led them to a broken window on the second floor of the main factory building. The view that greeted them was not one of decay, but of obscene, vibrant industry. The vast, cavernous space had been transformed into a hive of malevolent activity. Long tables were covered in complex chemical glassware, condensers, flasks, and heating mantles connected by a web of tubes. Men in stained coveralls and respirator masks moved with a practiced, silent efficiency between vats of simmering, toxic-looking liquids. Armed guards, their postures alert and dangerous, cradled assault rifles as they patrolled the perimeter. And in the far corner, they retreated like ghosts, their hearts hammering a frantic rhythm against their ribs, not speaking a single word until they were a solid mile down the trail, the mill's oppressive hum finally fading behind them. Then they ran. They didn't go home. They went straight to the Clearwater Sheriff's Station, believing it was the safest place in the world. Maya, her face pale but her voice resolute, handed the memory card to the deputy at the front desk. "There's a drug lab in the old mill," she said, her voice shaking only slightly. "The Vipers. We filmed it. Everything." The public response was swift and triumphant. The Sheriff's Department, with Inspector Marco Rossi prominently leading the charge, launched a massive, televised raid that very night. It was the lead story on every local news channel. They arrested 8 low-level operatives and seized what was reported as a street value of $20 million in methamphetamine. Inspector Rossi gave a press conference, standing proudly in front of a table laden with the seized drugs, praising the brave, vigilant, and public-spirited young citizens who had come forward. My Maya was a local hero. I felt a surge of immense paternal pride, so potent it almost drowned out the veteran journalist's nagging suspicion in the back of my mind. The whole operation had felt too clean, too easy. The kingpin, the infrastructure, it had all vanished, leaving only the pawns to be captured. We had unknowingly swatted a hornet's nest, and we didn't realize the queen was not only still alive, but that her sting was protected by the beekeeper we had trusted to bring the smoke. The viper's venom had seeped into the very foundations of our local authority. Inspector Rossi wasn't just incompetent, he was Cobra's right hand, the gang's early warning system and chief protector. He had immediately informed his boss of the source of the leak, and a decision had been made. The vipers could not be seen as vulnerable. A message needed to be sent. The line in the sand was drawn in my daughter's blood 48 hours later. Maya was driving home from school, taking the scenic route along Ridgeline Road, a beautiful, winding strip of asphalt that offered stunning panoramic views of the reserve's canopy. It was also notoriously deserted. A beaten-up truck with tinted windows pulled out from a hidden forestry road and rammed her small sedan from behind, forcing it into the metal guardrail with a shriek of tortured metal. 2 men jumped out. They weren't wearing masks. They wanted her to see their faces, to remember them. They weren't there to rob her. They were there to deliver a message. They smashed her windows with cold, brutal efficiency, dragged her screaming from the car, and set upon her with metal pipes. They aimed with chilling precision for her arms, her legs, her ribs, bones that could be broken, a spirit that could be crushed. The sound of the impacts, the sickening cracks, were later discovered to have been recorded by her car's dashcam, which they, in their arrogant haste, had missed. It was only the fortuitous appearance of a park ranger's truck that scared them off, leaving my daughter as a broken, bleeding heap on the asphalt, her life seeping onto the gravel. The call from the hospital is a permanent scar on my memory, a black hole that swallowed the man I used to be. The world shrank to the doctor's calm, clinical voice listing her injuries as if reading a grocery list. A compound fracture of the right arm, 3 broken ribs, a severe concussion, a lacerated spleen, and a face so swollen and bruised she was almost unrecognizable. Walking into that ICU and seeing her small body so full of life and light just hours before, now connected to a web of tubes and wires, the steady, mocking beep of the heart monitor the only sound. Something fundamental inside me shattered. The carefully constructed walls of my journalistic objectivity, my lifelong belief in due process, my faith in the system, they crumbled into dust. The hurt and the terror were consumed in a furnace of pure, undiluted rage. But it wasn't a hot, chaotic rage. It was a cold, focused, and absolute fury. The shift was tectonic and irreversible. Leo Thorne, the observer, the chronicler, was gone. In his place was a weapon, a father whose only purpose was the utter and complete annihilation of the men who had done this and the corrupted system that enabled them. The time for reporting the story was over. It was time to become the author of a very different ending. The first thing I did was seal our sanctuary. I moved Maya to a secure private clinic 2 towns over, under an assumed name. The glass house with its beautiful, vulnerable views was empty. It was no longer a home, it was a crime scene and a war room. My mission was no longer about grief. It was about strategy. The emotional plea had died in that hospital hallway. Now it was about building an unassailable case. My first ally was a ghost from my past, a man known only as Silas. He was an information broker, a digital phantom who lived in the spaces between firewalls and encrypted servers. Years ago, during an investigation into data trafficking, I had protected his identity at great personal cost. He owed me a debt and now I was calling it in. Silas, it's Leo Thorne. The debt is called in. There was a long pause on the encrypted line, then a voice filtered through a scrambler. Protocol, Foxtrot, Zulu, Niner. Authenticated. What do you need? I need you to burn a criminal organization to the ground.
The Vipers.
Based in Clearwater. Their leader, Cobra, their distribution network, their financials, their safe houses, and I need to know which law enforcement officials are on their payroll. The local sheriff's department is compromised. I need everything. Money is no object. Depth? He asked, the single word implying the totality of the destruction I sought. To the bedrock. I want to know what they had for breakfast. And I need it yesterday. Understood. Stand by for data packet. Secure channel as before. My second call was to Ben Carter. I'd written a profile on his private security firm, Aegis Solutions, years earlier after they'd successfully extracted a journalist from a hostage situation in a war zone. He was former Special Forces, a man whose mind was a tactical supercomputer and whose moral compass was forged in fire. Ben, it's Leo Thorne. Leo. His voice was guarded. "I saw the news about your daughter. I'm so sorry." "Sorry isn't enough, Ben," I said, my voice flat and cold. "The police who are supposed to be investigating are covering it up. I need your team, not for protection, for offense. I need surveillance, forensic accounting, cyber intelligence. I want to dismantle this gang and the corrupt cops protecting them piece by piece. I need to build a case so airtight that the highest levels of federal law enforcement will have no choice but to move in and burn it all down." There was no hesitation. He heard the change in me, the death of the journalist and the birth of the strategist. "Give me 12 hours to assemble a team and acquire gear. We'll be there." The gathering of evidence became my new full-time obsession. My home office, once a place of books and quiet contemplation, was transformed into a command center that would have been the envy of any newsroom I'd ever worked in. Whiteboards covered the walls, dotted with photos, maps, and a web of strings connecting names, locations, and transactions. Ben arrived with a small elite team. Kaido, a stoic Japanese-Brazilian hacker whose fingers flew across keyboards like a concert pianist's, and Maria, a former CIA analyst whose mind could find a narrative thread in a haystack of disconnected data. While Maya began her long, painful recovery in the secure clinic, shielded from the storm I was brewing, we worked around the clock. Ben's team performed physical reconnaissance using drones equipped with thermal and night vision cameras to track the movements of the remaining Vipers. They identified 2 primary safe houses in the nearby city and a distribution warehouse masquerading as a legitimate import-export business. More critically, they confirmed the corruption at the highest level. They captured long-lens photographs of Inspector Rossi meeting with a known Viper lieutenant in a deserted parking garage at 2 a.m., exchanging a thick envelope for a smaller, denser one. Meanwhile, Kaido worked his digital magic. He didn't just hack. He became a ghost in the machine. He infiltrated the gang's preferred encrypted messaging app, not just capturing current logs, but harvesting years of archived communications. He tunneled into their financial records, hidden in a Russian doll-like nest of offshore shell companies in the Caymans and Cyprus, and found spreadsheets detailing monthly payments to an account listed only as MR, Marco Rossi. The amounts were staggering, but the crown jewel, the piece of evidence that turned a case of corruption into one of attempted murder, was an audio file Kaido pulled from a lieutenant's compromised smartphone. It was Cobra himself, his voice a low, chilling rasp, giving the explicit order, "The Thorne girl, the one with the camera, she's a loose end. Cut it, permanently, make it messy. Send a message everyone will understand. Everyone will understand." We didn't just have evidence, we had a story, a damning, incontrovertible narrative of deep-rooted corruption, systemic violence, and premeditated attempted murder told through the gang's own words and transactions. We compiled everything into a master dossier, a digital file and a physical bound volume so comprehensive and well-sourced it was a work of art in its horrifying detail. It contained timelines, financial flowcharts, transcriptions of the encrypted messages, the damning audio file, and the photographic evidence of Rossi's treachery. But I knew we couldn't go local. We had to go over the entire corrupted structure, to a power that Rossi couldn't touch and Cobra couldn't bribe. I used my last remaining chip in the world of official power. I called David Chen, a deputy director at the FBI, a man whose career I had saved years ago by refusing to reveal him as a confidential source during a politically explosive investigation. "David, it's Leo." "Leo? It's been years. What's wrong?" He heard the death in my voice immediately. "I'm sending you a package via encrypted courier. It contains evidence of a multi-state drug trafficking operation, led by a figure known as Cobra, protected by a network of corrupt law enforcement in Clearwater, California. They attempted to execute my teenage daughter for exposing them. The local system is a hostile entity. I am formally requesting the FBI intervene and take over this investigation." The line was silent for a long moment. "That's a monumental accusation, Leo." "The evidence is monumental, David," I said, my voice devoid of any plea. Only cold fact. "Review it. You'll see. The local sheriff is a pawn. The regional inspector is the knight. And I'm giving you the king." The FBI moved with the terrifying, impersonal force of a natural law. A special task force, dubbed Operation Viper's Nest, was assembled out of the Sacramento field office, comprised of agents from the organized crime and public corruption units. They reviewed our dossier, and the evidence was so overwhelming, so cleanly presented, that they initiated a full-scale investigation, completely bypassing the Clearwater Sheriff's Department and the Regional Task Force. Rossi and his men were kept entirely in the dark, treated as targets, not colleagues. The reckoning began at 5:00 a.m. on a fog-shrouded Tuesday. It was a synchronized, multi-pronged assault designed to decapitate the organization in one fell swoop. FBI SWAT teams, clad in black body armor and armed with battering rams and flashbangs, hit the two Viper safe houses and the distribution warehouse simultaneously. The arrests were swift, violent, and clinical. There was no negotiation, no warning. Doors were blown off their hinges, and disorientated men were dragged from their beds in handcuffs. The most satisfying moment, captured in high definition on a federal agent's body cam, was the arrest of Inspector Marco Rossi. He was in his kitchen in a wealthy suburban neighborhood, pouring himself a cup of single-origin coffee, the picture of respectable law enforcement. His front door exploded inward, splintering into 1,000 pieces. He looked up, not with shock or outrage, but with a weary, profound resignation. He didn't reach for his service weapon. He simply placed his coffee cup carefully on the counter and put his hands in the air as an agent recited his Miranda rights. The look on his face was not of a caught criminal, but of a man who knew the elaborate house of cards he had built had finally collapsed, and the bill had come due with devastating interest. The final confrontation was at Cobra's compound, a sprawling fortress-like estate 50 miles north, hidden amongst the rolling hills of the wine country. The FBI had used the digital footprint Kaito uncovered, the IP addresses, the server logs, the financial transfers, to pinpoint this previously unknown location. When the FBI commander demanded surrender over a loudspeaker, the response was a hail of automatic gunfire from within the house. Cobra, the ghost, the man who had believed his wealth and anonymity made him untouchable, had chosen to go out in a blaze of glory rather than face justice. A ferocious 30-minute firefight ensued, the staccato reports of rifles echoing through the vineyards. When the smoke cleared, the agents made entry. The notorious kingpin, the source of the poison, lay dead in his marble foyer, surrounded by the expensive, tasteless My story is one of reclamation. We reclaimed our safety, our peace, and our faith in the possibility of true justice. But the greatest revenge was not Cobra's death in a hail of bullets or the clang of a prison cell door for Marco Rossi. The greatest revenge, the most profound and lasting victory, is the sight of my daughter, whole and thriving, her laughter once again echoing through our home, a beacon of resilience who looked into the abyss and, with courage and help, forced it to blink. She took her pain and alchemized it into purpose. She is the new dawn, and her light, tested and tempered, will never be extinguished. If you believe that the bonds of family and the pursuit of justice can overcome any darkness, then this story is your call to arms. Do not let anyone convince you that you are powerless against corruption or intimidation. Your voice, your resolve, and your love are the most powerful weapons you possess. Take it from someone who learned the hardest way possible. Fortify your spirit, document the truth, and never, ever be afraid to stand your ground and fight for the light. For the strongest bonds are not those never tested, but those forged in the fires of adversity, emerging not just intact, but tempered, unbreakable, and radiant with the unshakable knowledge that, no matter how deep the shadows fall, courage and love will always, always find a way to light the path home.